Hi, welcome to Russian History of Russia. On today's episode, fraternal turf wars, medieval Russia marrying to like all of Europe, 1,000-year-old tweets full of F-bombs, and quite a lot of butt talk.
It's big, it's cold, it's full of gas and gold. It's 1,200 years old, but still never does as told. We're Christians, but not really Europeans, but from Asia. We send the dogs to space and kill the Tsars on occasion. We drink sodas made from bread, eat our enemies in kasha, and that's why it's so fun to study history of Russia.
Today we're covering what is known as the Kievan Rus Golden Age, a period quite often following successful conquering, unification of lands, and consolidation of power, and equally often followed by fragmentation or a great war, or in case of Kievan Rus, kind of both. But before we get there, who's ready for some good old-fashioned dysfunctional family story? So in the previous episode we followed the rule of Vladimir I, and he was a busy guy and had at least 11 sons. And following a pretty messy tradition, those sons were given lands and cities other than Kiev that they would rule and pay tribute to their dad. Several of those sons died before Vladimir did, technically making Svatopolk the first in line for Kiev. However, Svatopolk's mother was the Greek nun, the wife of Yaropolk, Vladimir's half-brother he had killed. Some sources say that she was already pregnant when Vladimir killed Yaropolk and married her, so it's quite possible that Vladimir wasn't Svatopolk's dad, and not in a kind of way that you need a paternity test to make sure. Even if that is true, Svatopolk definitely inherited Vladimir's inclination for fratricide. His nickname in Russian was Okayanny, roughly translated as cursed. The bad rap starts with him being accused of treason. Supposedly he and his wife, a Polish princess, disapproved of Vladimir's choice of faith for Rus, so Vladimir imprisoned him in Kiev. According to another version, what he actually disliked wasn't the Greek church, but his younger brother, Boris, born of Vladimir's Greek wife, the Byzantine princess. By the way, yes, I'm going to insist that it's Boris and not Boris. In particular, Svatopolk didn't find ideal the fact that Vladimir really liked Boris, so much so that he actually wanted him to take the Kievan throne. That is despite Boris being like 7th in line, minus a couple dead brothers. That version is supported by the fact that Svatopolk wasn't the only one concerned. The next one in line, Yaroslav, rebelled against his father too. He stopped paying tribute to his dad like a total brat and was preparing for a war. And that brings us to why Svatopolk really earned his nickname. After Vladimir got sick and died in 1015, Svatopolk just walked out of jail and took power in Kiev. And by the first order of business, he sent assassins to kill Boris, who was really liked by many, not just Vladimir, therefore posed a threat. Svatopolk then finished off the next brother, Gleb, as well, and the two of those became the first Russian saints and martyrs. Finally, just to be on the safe side, Svatopolk had a third brother killed, Sviatoslav Jr., who ruled in, you guessed it, the Drevlian's land. Seriously, if anything was ever cursed, it was that throne. Now Svatopolk had to pick on someone his own size, Yaroslav, who ruled Novgorod. By the way, speaking of dysfunctional family, remember Rogneda, the one that Vladimir had raped and killed her father and brothers and married her? Yeah, Yaroslav's mom. So, since Yaroslav was already gathering troops against his dad before, he was already pumped and ready to go. The next 4 years are gonna have a lot of buts, and would be best accompanied by Benny Hill's soundtrack, but that one is copyrighted, so I'll just use the next best thing. So, Yaropolk and Sviatoslav go at it, and Yaroslav kicks Svatopolk's butt, so Yaroslav rules Kiev. But Svatopolk runs over to his dad-in-law in Poland, so Svatopolk returns with the Polish army and kicks Yaroslav's butt, and now he rules Kiev. But Svatopolk doesn't like the Poles anymore because they keep raiding his fridge and eating his borscht, so he tells them to leave, and they do. But now he has no army. So Yaroslav goes and fetches himself a Viking army and kicks Svatopolk's butt. What happened to his butt afterwards is really unknown, but the primary chronicle says that he got paralyzed and went crazy and died somewhere on the run. And that is how the Golden Age and the rule of Yaroslav the Wise began in 1019, the end. Yaroslav was evidently a pretty smart guy, especially when it came to diplomacy. For example, if you've been following the math, we still got 3 more brothers left, which is of course 3 brothers too many. One somehow wasn't really in the picture and we don't know much about him. The youngest of them all, Yaroslav will end up imprisoning in 1034 because just in case. And one of them, Mstislav, actually attacked Yaroslav in 1024 and won. This could have gone for another several years, but instead the brothers made a deal. They divided their lands along the Dnieper River, with Yaroslav remaining both Kievan and Novgorod prince. And instead of holding a grudge and planning the next murder, they fought against invaders together. However, being the smart guy he was, he preferred to live up north in Novgorod, far away from Mstislav until his death in 1034, which is when Yaroslav imprisoned the remaining brother, which made him the one and only ruler of all Rus lands. His real talent for diplomacy, however, was realized through marriage. Yaroslav became family with almost all of royal Europe. He himself was married to the daughter of the king of Sweden, his sister was married to the ruler of Poland, and his sons to Polish, German, and Byzantine princesses. His daughters, though, preferred kings. One was married to the king of Hungary, one to the king of Norway, and one to the Frank king. The stone kept rock and rolling even after his death, with his grandson marrying the daughter of the last king of Anglo-Saxon Britain, and his granddaughter even marrying the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Henry IV. Yaroslav was quite good at military campaigns and was the one to finally defeat the Pechenegs for good. Pechenegs were another nomadic Turkic people in the south of Rus, who would invade pretty much every weekend and were a real pain in the butt for quite some time, especially because Byzantine liked to purchase their services to use them as a shield against Rus invasions. The Pecheneg attacks were so ubiquitous that during Vladimir's rule, Rus began using the signal towers, like in The Lord of the Rings, throughout its southern borders to alert the cities when Pechenegs were on their way to pay another friendly visit. Yaroslav's nickname, the Wise, was earned through his extensive cathedrals construction and contribution to education and literacy. For an 11th century state, Rus held a pretty special place among other European states when it came to literacy. If you remember the European Reformation, then you know that up until 16th century, pretty much nobody in Europe, outside of clergy and very few educated nobles, could actually read the religious texts and other books because those were in Latin. But Rus, upon adopting Greek Christianity, immediately began the process of translating everything into Slavic. As a result, pretty much everybody could understand the services, and many even read the texts themselves. That, combined with educational efforts, led to uniquely wide spread of literacy among even the common people. And we know that because we have amazing archaeological evidence. The area around Novgorod has these unique soil conditions that preserved some really naughty 11th and 12th century notes written on birch bark. Those notes are essentially a millennia-old tweets full of burns and F-bombs, so basically not that different from today's internet. Birch bark manuscript number 944, for example, tells that something needs to be done about the neighbor who f***s pigs. And number 955 is from one woman writing to another, Marenka, curse your cunt, pay me back my money. And look, I'm doing the best I can with my translation here. No wonder Russians love their swearing so much today. We owned that shit for 1,000 years. So Kiev under Yaroslav was becoming a big and very rich city. Western visitors even compared it to Constantinople. Churches and cathedrals were being erected everywhere across Rus, including the St. Sophia's Cathedral in Kiev built in 1030s, and after reconstructions, of course, still standing today. Many markets were flowing with goods from Swedish to Persian, multiplying on the fruitful soil of relative peace and safety achieved in that period. Another very adult thing that Yaroslav did was establishing the first written code of law called Ruskaya Pravda, which literally translates to Russian truth, but at the time less poetically meant Russian law. Before that, early Kievan Rus lived by the law of traditions, mostly passed verbally. When Yaroslav's father, Vladimir, baptized the Rus, he initially agreed to adopt some Byzantine laws, which included corporal and lethal punishment, while Rus actually just fined people. Vladimir quickly reversed that reform and went back to good old system of payouts, which is pretty much what Yaroslav then put in writing. The first, Yaroslav's chapter of the law code, mostly covered criminal justice, while his sons expanded it to cover property and inheritance laws. In his will, Yaroslav, finally learning from the past recipe for disaster, avoided dividing Novgorod and Kiev between different sons. He clearly established that the oldest one is the boss, and everybody else gets whatever lands, which actually led to a surprisingly peaceful coexistence and even cooperation for like half a century. Yaroslav died peacefully in the arms of his son, but the same cannot be said of his remains. Those have been in the center of their own little Indiana Jones adventures and are now actually believed to be somewhere in the United States. That is all for today. Coming up next, the triumvirate of Yaroslav's sons, Vladimir Monomakh and Not His Hat, and the Rus falling apart. See you then.